Venture into a realm where solitude takes on an ominous form, an exploration into the lives of 10 individuals who faced unimaginable stretches of time in solitary confinement, an experience that tested the boundaries of human endurance. Number 1. Robert King. Robert King, a member of the trio famously known as the Angola Three, spent an astonishing 29 years in solitary confinement at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola Prison. Born in 1942, King grew up during a time when segregation and racism were rampant, and these societal issues played a role in the trajectory of his life. Initially sentenced for robbery in 1970, King was later wrongfully convicted for the murder of a fellow inmate in 1973, a crime he staunchly maintained he did not commit. This conviction led to his extended period in solitary confinement, during which he was confined to a 6x9-foot cell for 23 hours a day. The effects of such isolation were profound, stripping away the typical social interactions and environmental stimuli that most humans take for granted. Despite the isolation, King used his time in solitary to educate himself. He developed a strong interest in politics, particularly focusing on issues of racial injustice and prison reform. This intellectual pursuit was an act of resistance against the dehumanizing conditions of his confinement. In 2001, his conviction was overturned after it was found that he had not received a fair trial. After his release, King took his experiences and lessons learned in solitary confinement to the outside world, becoming a staunch advocate for prison reform and the abolition of solitary confinement. He utilized his newfound freedom to speak out against the systemic injustices within the prison system, making the transition from prisoner to activist. King's life and experience in solitary confinement highlight the stark reality of this punitive practice. The mental resilience required to survive such conditions is enormous, and the long-lasting effects can be transformative. While his time in solitary confinement was a period of intense hardship, King's story also serves as a testament to human resilience and the power of education and self-advocacy. His story is not only a chilling tale of solitude and survival, but also an inspiring journey of transformation and advocacy against a broken system. Number 2. Thomas Silverstein. Thomas Edward Silverstein, born in 1952, entered the world of crime early, eventually becoming an infamous figure within the United States penal system. However, his notoriety wasn't merely a result of his criminal activities, but rather for the extraordinary duration of his solitary confinement, an astounding 36 years, thought to be the longest in the American penal system. Silverstein was initially sentenced for armed robbery in 1975. His life took a darker turn during his incarceration, where he became associated with the Aryan Brotherhood, a white supremacist prison gang. Over the years, Silverstein was implicated in multiple murders within prison, leading to his assignment to solitary confinement in 1983. His solitary confinement was particularly severe due to his designation as a high-risk prisoner. He was held under a no human contact order, where he was effectively barred from any form of direct interaction with other human beings. The restrictions imposed on Silverstein were severe, with a highly regimented daily routine that left little room for variation. His cell was bare bones, just a bed, toilet, sink, and a small desk. Silverstein was not allowed any personal items, except for a few books and letters. His meals were slid through a small slot in the door, and he was allowed 1 hour per day to exercise in a small, enclosed area. Despite the desolation, Silverstein sought refuge in art and literature. He took up drawing and painting, using it as a way to communicate with the outside world, a therapeutic avenue to keep his mind active and avoid descending into despair. Additionally, he maintained a voluminous correspondence, sharing his experiences and thoughts on his situation with those outside the prison walls. Many of his letters shed light on the psychological effects of long-term isolation, as he grappled with periods of depression, anxiety, and the continual struggle to retain his sanity under such extreme conditions. He compared his isolation to living in a slow-motion time warp, a world that existed in stillness while life outside continued its normal pace. He also filed multiple lawsuits against the prison system, contesting the conditions of his confinement. Despite his efforts, these legal challenges were mostly unsuccessful, with the courts citing his dangerous behavior as justification for his treatment. Silverstein's story raises complex questions about the nature of solitary confinement. Is it a necessary evil to manage dangerous individuals, or is it an inhumane practice that inflicts excessive psychological damage? As such, his case became a focal point for debates around the use of solitary confinement. Thomas Silverstein died in 2019 while still in solitary confinement. His legacy, however, continues to resonate. His experience underscores the often overlooked mental health implications of prolonged isolation and the broader conversation around prison reform. Silverstein's story serves as a stark reminder of the grim reality of solitary confinement, highlighting the necessity of rethinking this punitive practice in modern incarceration. Number 3. Herman Wallace. Herman Wallace's name is inexorably tied to the Angola Three, a trio of men, including Robert King and Albert WOODFOX, who spent decades in solitary confinement at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola Prison. Wallace's story is particularly noteworthy as he spent more than 40 years in solitary confinement, one of the longest periods recorded in U.S. history. Born in 1941, Wallace's early life was a struggle against societal prejudices and systemic inequalities that culminated in his incarceration for bank robbery in 1967. However, his life took a drastic turn in 1972 when he was accused and convicted of the murder of a prison guard, a crime he consistently denied committing. Following his conviction, Wallace was assigned to solitary confinement, a punitive measure that limited him to a 6x 9-foot cell for 23 hours a day. The prolonged isolation was a stark contrast to the societal norms outside the prison walls, stripping Wallace of basic human interactions and placing immense psychological strain on him. Despite the isolation, Wallace was far from idle. He, along with fellow Angola 3 members, became involved in the Black Panther Party, utilizing their time in confinement to educate themselves and raise awareness about racial injustice, prison conditions, and the concept of prisoners' rights. This activism brought attention to their case, attracting supporters and advocates who believed in their innocence. In solitary, Wallace faced both physical and mental challenges. His health declined significantly over the years, with him developing severe health problems, including liver cancer. Despite these issues, he continued his fight for freedom, maintaining his innocence and challenging his conviction in the courts. After several appeals and legal battles, Wallace's murder conviction was finally overturned in 2013. However, his release from prison was bittersweet, as he was already gravely ill due to his advanced liver cancer. Tragically, he passed away just 3 days after his release, having barely tasted freedom after 4 decades of solitary confinement. Wallace's story is a potent reminder of the enduring human spirit and the severe repercussions of systemic injustices within the prison system. Despite his extended period in solitary confinement, he used his circumstances to educate, advocate, and inspire, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to fuel conversations about prison reform and the abolishment of long-term solitary confinement. Number 4. Albert WOODFOX. Albert WOODFOX, the last of the Angola Three to be released, spent an unimaginable 43 years in solitary confinement in Louisiana's Angola prison. His tale, like his comrades Herman Wallace and Robert King, reflects the harsh realities of solitary confinement and its impacts. WOODFOX was born in 1947 in a time marked by racial tensions and inequalities. Initially convicted of armed robbery, he was sent to Angola in 1971. His life took a darker turn when he and Wallace were implicated in the 1972 murder of a prison guard, a crime both men steadfastly denied. In response to this conviction, WOODFOX was placed in solitary confinement, starting an incredibly lengthy period of extreme isolation. He was confined to a 6x 9-foot cell for 23 hours a day with minimal human interaction, a situation that tests the limits of human endurance and psychological resilience. Despite his circumstances, WOODFOX was not broken. He became an active member of the Black Panther Party, advocating for prisoners' rights and using his solitary confinement as a platform to speak out against racial and judicial injustices. He used his time in isolation to educate himself, reading widely on topics such as history, politics, and law, in an attempt to understand and challenge the system that had confined him. Living in a confined space with minimal human contact was an extreme challenge. To cope, WOODFOX developed a rigid daily routine, including physical workouts and reading sessions. He credited this routine with helping him maintain his sanity and physical health during his prolonged isolation. Like his comrades, WOODFOX continued to fight his conviction through legal channels. After many appeals and extensive legal battles, WOODFOX's conviction was overturned in 2014, but the state announced plans to retry him. However, facing ill health and the prospect of another trial, he accepted a plea deal in 2016 and was finally released. His time in solitary confinement had taken a toll, both mentally and physically, but WOODFOX emerged resolute and determined to make a difference. He has since become an advocate for prison reform, particularly focusing on the abolition of long-term solitary confinement, using his experiences to shed light on its damaging effects. WOODFOX's story highlights the stark realities and harsh impacts of prolonged solitary confinement, but it's also a testament to human resilience. Through decades of isolation, he maintained his spirit and dignity, using his ordeal as a platform for activism. His experiences underscore the need for extensive prison reform and an end to long-term solitary confinement. Number 5. John Massey. John Massey holds the infamous distinction of being one of the United Kingdom's longest-serving prisoners, with a significant portion of his sentence spent in solitary confinement. His story provides an insight into the effects of prolonged isolation within the British penal system. Born in 1945, Massey's criminal history began early. Initially incarcerated for the murder of a pub doorman in a scuffle in 1975, his 20-year sentence evolved into 4 decades behind bars, partly due to his repeated escape attempts. Massey's solitary confinement came as a result of these escape attempts. The prison authorities deemed him a flight risk and decided the only way to prevent further escape attempts was to isolate him completely. He spent long stretches of time in solitary confinement with little to no human interaction. In the isolation of solitary confinement, Massey had to find ways to maintain his sanity. He spent his time writing and reading extensively, developing a keen interest in philosophy and meditation. He credits these pursuits with helping him survive his isolation, providing a mental escape from the confines of his cell. Over the years, Massey expressed remorse for his crime and repeatedly appealed for release. He viewed his prolonged sentence and solitary confinement as an excessive punishment, fueled more by his escape attempts than by his original crime. His numerous escapes brought attention to his case, shining a light on the length of his incarceration and the use of solitary confinement in the British prison system. His case became a focal point for discussions about the nature of punitive practices, with critics arguing that his prolonged isolation was more about control than about rehabilitation. Finally, in 2018, after spending over 4 decades behind bars, Massey was released. His freedom came with a deep sense of relief, but also a profound understanding of the psychological toll of solitary confinement. The outside world was a shock after his lengthy isolation, with the noise, technology, and pace of life being overwhelming at first. Number 6. Peter Moore. Peter Moore, known as the Man in Black, holds a grim reputation in the annals of British crime history. However, it's his lengthy period in solitary confinement that brings him to focus in this narrative. Moore's experience underscores the psychological implications of extended isolation and the need for a holistic approach towards prisoner treatment. Born in 1946, Moore's life took a dark turn in the mid-1990 SS when he committed a series of crimes that shocked the UK. His activities led to his arrest and subsequent conviction in 1996. Due to the nature of his crimes, Moore was deemed a high-risk prisoner and was placed in solitary confinement. His experience in solitary confinement was one marked by routine and restriction. Confined to a small cell for 23 hours a day, Moore's world was reduced to 4 walls, a striking contrast to the freedom of the outside world. This lack of environmental stimuli and human interaction posed a significant challenge, as the human mind often struggles in the face of such isolation. Moore, however, found a way to adapt to his new reality. He filled his time with reading and studying, developing a keen interest in cinema, particularly in horror and suspense genres. He also wrote letters and participated in correspondence chess games, activities that provided him a semblance of connection to the world beyond his cell. His time in solitary was not without its psychological toll. Extended periods of isolation can lead to a range of mental health issues, including depression and anxiety, symptoms Moore reportedly experienced. Despite these challenges, he continued his routine, attempting to maintain a sense of normalcy within the abnormal environment of solitary confinement. Moore's story reminds us of the complexities of the prison system and the challenges faced by those in solitary confinement. While his crimes were indeed severe, his experiences in solitary confinement underscore the need for a more nuanced approach to penal practices, one that balances societal protection with humane treatment of inmates. His story highlights the pressing need for reform and change within the prison system, a fight that continues to this day. Number 7. Ian Brady. Ian Brady, one half of the infamous Moore's murderers duo with Myra Hindley, holds a grim reputation within British criminal history. While his horrific crimes have been widely discussed, less attention has been given to his prolonged period in solitary confinement and its psychological implications. Brady was born in 1938, and his notorious criminal activities with Hindley took place in the mid-1960s. Their crimes shocked the nation, leading to their arrest and conviction in 1966. Deemed extremely dangerous, Brady was placed in solitary confinement, a punitive measure that drastically limited his human interactions and environmental stimuli. In the solitary confinement, Brady was confined to a small cell for most of the day. His world was reduced to these four walls, with limited human interaction and strictly controlled daily routines. This isolation could take a severe psychological toll, as it often does on prisoners. Despite the stark environment, Brady found ways to occupy his time. He read widely, diving into topics ranging from philosophy to war history. He also wrote extensively, expressing his views on various subjects, thereby creating an intellectual stimulus to counter the effects of his physical isolation. Brady passed away in 2017, after spending over 50 years in prison, a large portion of which was in solitary confinement. His life and experiences within the penal system serve as a stark reminder of the severe psychological toll of extended solitary confinement. His story prompts conversations about the ethics of such practices, pointing to the need for change within the system. Despite his heinous crimes, Brady's experience in solitary confinement underscores the necessity of a more nuanced approach to punishment and rehabilitation. His case provides a unique perspective into the world of solitary confinement within the UK prison system, prompting discussions on the need for a more humane and effective approach to dealing with high-risk prisoners. As his story unfolds, the conversation about reforming these practices continues, a testament to the complexity of balancing punishment, societal protection, and inmate rights. Number 8. Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson, often dubbed the most violent prisoner in Britain, has spent a significant portion of his life in prison, with many of those years in solitary confinement. His case offers an exploration into the effects of prolonged isolation on an individual and its implications on prison systems. Bronson was born in 1952, and his criminal history spans multiple decades, starting in the early 1970s. His offenses range from armed robbery to causing bodily harm, but it's his violent behavior in prison that led to his extensive time in solitary confinement. His violent tendencies made him a high-risk prisoner, leading authorities to isolate him from the general prison population. His time in solitary confinement, often stretching for years at a stretch, is filled with stories of physical workouts, artwork, and writing. Despite the severe restrictions of his isolation, Bronson managed to find ways to express himself and maintain his mental well-being. He turned to physical exercise to manage his energy and emotions and developed a passion for art and writing, activities that allowed him an outlet for his thoughts and feelings. But the impacts of solitary confinement weren't solely positive. The long-term isolation took a toll on Bronson's mental health, with reports of heightened aggression and psychological strain. The lack of regular human interaction and the harsh realities of confinement painted a grim picture of his time in solitary. Bronson's prolonged confinement became a focal point in discussions about prison reform and the ethical implications of long-term solitary confinement. Critics argue that such isolation is an inhumane form of punishment, exacerbating mental health issues and doing little for rehabilitation. However, Bronson's story also stands as a testament to human resilience. Despite the harsh conditions and mental strain of his confinement, he found ways to express himself and maintain his physical fitness. He has even achieved a level of recognition for his artwork and writing, which often reflects his experiences and perspectives on the prison system. As of my knowledge cutoff in September 2021, Bronson remains in prison, still a prominent figure in discussions about the UK prison system. His experiences and responses to long-term solitary confinement continue to ignite conversations about the penal system's treatment of high-risk prisoners and the need for reform. Number 9. Shoichi Yokoi. While not a prisoner in the conventional sense, Shoichi Yokoi, a Japanese soldier from World War II, experienced a unique form of solitary confinement that merits discussion. His story provides an unusual but revealing perspective on the human capacity for survival in isolation. Yokoi was born in 1915 and was a sergeant in the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. When the Allies recaptured Guam in 1944, Yokoi, along with other Japanese soldiers, retreated into the island's dense jungles. He managed to evade capture and lived in solitude for nearly 28 years, unaware that the war had ended. This period of self-imposed solitary confinement was a testament to Yokoi's survival skills and mental resilience. He lived in a cave, survived on a diet of nuts, fruits, and small animals, and used the materials available to him in the jungle to meet his basic needs. This self-sustained lifestyle, combined with the fear of capture, made his existence one of constant vigilance and resourcefulness. Yokoi's solitary confinement was different from the typical prison confinement. He had the freedom of the jungle, yet his mental state was similar to that of someone in a prison cell. His life was governed by survival instincts, and he had minimal human interaction, which could have led to feelings of loneliness and isolation. His solitary existence came to an end in 1972, when he was discovered by local hunters. When he learned that the war had ended decades ago, Yokoi expressed a sense of shame, stating that he was embarrassed to return to Japan. His reintroduction to society was challenging, as he had to readjust to a world vastly different from the one he had left. Yokoi's story is an extraordinary tale of survival in solitude. It highlights the impacts of isolation on the human psyche and the human capacity for adaptation and resilience. Despite his unique circumstances, Yokoi's experience parallels the struggles faced by individuals in solitary confinement, providing an unusual perspective on isolation and its impacts. Number 10. Robert Stroud. Robert Stroud, better known as the Birdman of Alcatraz, is a noteworthy figure in American prison history. While his affinity for birds has been well documented, less attention has been given to his extensive time in solitary confinement and its impact on his life and psyche. Stroud's life of crime began early, with his first conviction at the age of 19 in 1909. He was sent to the United States Penitentiary, Leavenworth, for manslaughter in 1916. His violent behavior in prison, including killing a prison guard, led to his transfer to Alcatraz in 1942. This series of violent incidents made Stroud a high-risk prisoner, resulting in his extended period in solitary confinement. During his time in solitary, Stroud occupied his time studying and caring for birds, an activity that earned him the moniker Birdman of Alcatraz. Despite the severe restrictions of his confinement, Stroud managed to find a sense of purpose in studying bird diseases and breeding. His work was so significant that he wrote 2 books on canaries and their diseases, contributing to the field of ornithology. Stroud's experience with solitary confinement sparked debates about its use within the American penal system. His ability to produce valuable scientific work despite his confinement raised questions about the potential wasted in isolation cells across the country. Critics argued that focusing on rehabilitation and utilizing prisoners' talents could lead to more positive outcomes than solitary confinement. Stroud passed away in 1963, having spent 42 years in solitary confinement. His story stands as a testament to the potential within even the most isolated individuals. His contributions to ornithology, despite his circumstances, demonstrate the possible outcomes when prisoners are given the opportunity to learn, grow, and contribute. Stroud's case underscores the severe psychological effects of long-term solitary confinement and raises questions about the ethics and efficacy of this practice. His life serves as a stark reminder of the potential for growth and contribution even within a prison cell, prompting discussions on the need for reform and a shift in our understanding of punishment and rehabilitation.